Harry Potter came to me on a train in 1990. I was sitting just staring out of the window, and the idea just fell out of nowhere. It was the purest stroke of inspiration I've ever had in my life.
Followed by a number of deliberately misspelled versions of the word woman. Now, there was instant backlash to that. She was accused of being transphobic.
Well, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling and Ricky Gervais have proved that if you stand up to the woke, eventually you win. J.K. Rowling's book sales went from $7 million to $11.9 million worth last year.
Think you could stand up to the entire woke mob and Hollywood elite? That's exactly what J.K. Rowling's been doing, and she's not just surviving, she's thriving. And her book sales shot up from $7 million to $1.9 billion. But here's the real challenge. Could you stick to your guns like she has? Or would you cave under the pressure? Remember that tweet about people who menstruate? Yeah, that's where it all kicked off. J.K. Rowling, the mind behind Harry Potter, decided to share her thoughts on an article using that phrase. She wrote, "People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumbin, Wimpund, Woomud? Seems pretty harmless, right?" Well, Twitter didn't think so. Within minutes, her mentions exploded. Fans were losing their minds, celebs were freaking out, and suddenly everyone had an opinion. But was it really that bad? I mean, she was just pointing out biological facts, wasn't she?
Beginning of the end for Humza Yousaf started when J.K. Rowling condemned Scotland's newly imposed hate crime laws, which extended to trans-identifying people, but ignored biological women.
This is the infamous tweet from Rowling, where she claims that she would want to be a martyr for the transphobic movement, writing, "I'd happily do 2 years if the alternative is compelled speech and forced denial of the reality of the importance of
J.K. Rowling to deliberately, and that is the key word, misgender me, knowing who I am, is grossly offensive.
Things spiraled out of control fast. People were calling her a TERF. That's trans exclusionary radical feminist. For those who don't speak Twitter, others were accusing her of hate speech. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the car was Rowling's reputation and the crash was happening at light speed. But here's the thing, Rowling didn't back down. Nope, not even a little. Instead of apologizing or deleting the tweet, she doubled down. She wrote a whole essay explaining her views on sex and gender. She talked about her own experiences and why she was concerned about erasing the concept of biological sex. Of course, this just made people even angrier, but Rowling stood her ground. She refused to apologize for believing in biological reality. She even said, "It isn't hate to speak the truth." Now that's what I call sticking to your guns. You'd think this would be the end of it, right? Rowling made her point, people got mad, case closed. But oh no, this was just the beginning. The backlash was about to get a whole lot worse, and Hollywood was about to turn its back on the woman who made the millions. Ever wonder what happens when the creator of a billion-dollar franchise goes against the grain? Just ask the stars of Harry Potter. They're about to show us exactly how to bite the hand that feeds you. And trust me, it ain't pretty. Let's talk about those Potter kids, you know? The ones who went from nobodies to millionaires overnight thanks to J.K. Rowling? Yeah, those guys, Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Eddie Redmayne, they're all sitting pretty with fortunes most of us can only dream about. We're talking $110 million for Radcliffe, $85 million for Watson, and a cool $20 million for Redmayne. Not too shabby for waving a wand around, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Once Rowling started speaking her mind, these same stars couldn't distance themselves fast enough. It's like they forgot who put them on the map. One by one, they started coming out against her. Radcliffe wrote this whole essay about how transgender women are women. Watson tweeted about how she loves trans people. And Redmayne, he straight up said Rowling was simply wrong. Now, you gotta wonder, are they being sincere or are they just playing it safe? I mean, it's easy to take the popular stance when you've already got millions in the bank, but what about loyalty? What about standing by the woman who made you who you are? Seems like that's in short supply in Hollywood these days. But here's the kicker. Not everyone jumped on the anti-Rowling bandwagon. Ralph Fiennes, old Voldemort himself, actually stood up for her. He said she's been unfairly vilified and that her views should be part of a bigger conversation about women's rights. And Tom Felton, our favorite blonde baddie Draco Malfoy, also showed some support. At least some people remember their roots, huh? So what's all this drama gonna do to the franchise? You'd think with all these stars turning their backs, Rowling's empire would crumble, but nope. Plot twist, her book sales actually went up. Turns out all this controversy just made people more curious. They wanted to see what all the fuss was about, but don't think this is where the story ends. Oh no, the backlash was just getting started. Rowling was about to face something way bigger than a few ungrateful actors. The cancel culture mob was coming, and they were out for blood. So the Potter kids got their knickers in a twist. Big deal. Rowling was about to face a storm that would make Voldemort look like a pushover. Cancel culture came knocking, and they weren't asking politely. But guess what? They picked the wrong witch to mess with. You think you've seen online mobs before? This was next level. We're talking boycotts, Twitter campaigns, petitions, the whole 9 yards. People were losing their minds, trying to erase Rowling from the very franchise she created. It was like watching a bunch of toddlers try to cancel their mom. Good luck with that, kids. But here's where it gets really wild. Some folks took it way too far. We're talking death threats, doxing, the works. One trans athlete even tried to sue Rowling, claiming she was fueling online harassment. Seriously? Talk about shooting the messenger. Rowling was just speaking facts about women's sports, and suddenly she's public enemy number 1. Here's the thing about cancel culture though. It often backfires, big time. Why? Because people hate being told what to think. The more you try to silence someone, the more curious others get. It's like telling a kid not to push the big red button. What do you think they're gonna do? Rowling though? She didn't just sit back and take it. Nope. She doubled down. When some activists threatened to arrest her for misgendering, you know what she said? I'll happily do 2 years if the alternative is compelled speech and forced denial of the reality and importance of sex. That's not just standing your ground. That's building a fortress and daring anyone to try and knock it down. And you want to know the craziest part? Her critics couldn't even quote any actual transphobic statements she'd made. It was all just vague accusations and hurt feelings. Meanwhile, Rowling's out here fighting for free speech and women's rights like some kind of literary superhero. So how did Rowling turn this mess into a win? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Turns out all this drama was just fuel for her rocket ship to success. But we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about what happens when you try to cancel someone who refuses to be silenced. Remember when everyone said Rowling was finished? Yeah, about that. Seems like all those boycotts did was remind people how much they love Harry Potter. We're talking record-breaking sales, new adaptations, and a whole lot of egg on some faces. Let's break down how Rowling turned this career-ending controversy into her biggest payday yet. While Twitter was having a meltdown, Rowling's bank account was doing a happy dance. Her book sales, they didn't just go up, they exploded. We're talking a jump from 7 million to 1.9 billion. That's not just winning, that's obliterating the competition. And it's not just the books. Remember Hogwarts Legacy? That game was supposed to fail because of the boycotts. Instead, it sold over 12 million copies in its first 2 weeks. So much for cancel culture, huh? But why did all these boycotts fail so badly? Simple. Most people don't actually care about Twitter drama. They just want to enjoy a good story, and let's be real, Rowling's pretty good at those. Plus, all this controversy just made people curious. They wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Turns out telling people not to buy something is a great way to boost sales. So what's next for Rowling and the Potter franchise? Well, Warner Brothers is planning a new TV series based on the books, and you can bet it's gonna be huge. Because no matter how much noise the activists make, the fans are still there. They're still buying tickets, still reading books, still playing games. But here's the $1 million question. Are Rowling's critics right? Is she actually hurting trans people? Well, that's where things get complicated. Her supporters say she's just standing up for women's rights and protecting kids. Her critics say her words are dangerous. But here's the thing, nobody can actually point to anything she said that's actually transphobic. It's all just vague accusations and hurt feelings. So what does all this mean for cancel culture? Well, it looks like the tide might be turning. People are getting tired of the outrage machine. They're starting to realize that just because someone's offended, it doesn't mean they're right. And that's a lesson Hollywood might want to pay attention to. So Rowling stood her ground and came out on top. Big time. She didn't just weather the storm, she turned it into a gold mine. And you know what? That's a lesson for all of us. When the mob comes knocking, you don't have to open the door. Think about it. If Rowling had caved, apologized, and changed her tune, where would she be now? Probably not sitting on a pile of cash, that's for sure. Nah, she stuck to her guns and look what happened. Her books are flying off the shelves, her games are breaking records, and Hollywood's still knocking on her door. But But here's the real kicker. Is this the beginning of the end for cancel culture? I mean, if one of the biggest targets can not only survive but thrive, what does that say about the power of the mob? Maybe people are starting to realize that just because someone's offended, it doesn't mean they're right. You know, offense is about feelings, and feelings are personal. Some people are offended by equality. So what? You can't second guess yourself all the time. If you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one.